Afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you're probably getting pretty tired of listening to me, but I need to reemphasize my point. For the record, my name's Ken Boreski. I'm a local cyclist. I have been repeatedly victimized by this city. It's amazing sometimes how pieces of puzzles suddenly fall into place. I read a note the other day about how this city was awarded a silver-level bicycle-friendly America recognition. That is got to be the funniest thing I've read in a very long time. Unfortunately, it's true. So looking into how that's awarded, the city applies for it. The city is ranked based on things like how many bike crashes there are and how many people are seriously injured. Perhaps that's why when I've been hit by cars, the police won't document it. Perhaps that's why in the video you saw of me being rear-ended, the police refused to acknowledge that I suffered a traumatic brain injury and a fractured vertebrae and did not document it as bodily injury. Because that looks good on the stats, which helps you get an award that this city clearly doesn't deserve. We have a major problem here throughout the city where cyclists and pedestrians, at best, are an afterthought unless it's convenient for the city's image. I've been speaking up about that for years, and I've been retaliated against for years. As I've said previously, I was arrested for no crime whatsoever. Our chief has gone on the record many times saying he can't investigate because I won't cooperate under his conditions. I don't know how many of you saw the video I posted from Cyclovia, but if that's how the chief treats me in public, I have every reason to be afraid for my safety in private. When I offered to answer any questions he might have, immediately aggressive, his response was, "You've got to be kidding me, there will be no investigation." Further along in that conversation, sounds very similar to other people in the news right now in that total disregard for the Constitution and the entire judicial system. Despite the refusal to investigate why I was arrested, the chief says, "You were legitimately arrested." How can he make that decision? How can he make that statement? Despite the judge saying there was no probable cause for arrest. He's just thrown out our entire judicial system. I've said before and I've said again, there needs to be an investigation into my arrest from January of 2015. So over 2 years ago. Again, I was lawfully riding a bike. I said, the whole thing's on my YouTube. I've said it before, I've said it again. This city needs to respect the Constitution, there needs to be an investigation, and the responsible officers need to be punished and preferably jailed. Thank you.
With the Commission's forbearance, it's time that I respond to Mr. Boreski for the sake of the audience. I want to remind everyone here at the Commission, I wrote a lengthy, the manager signed a lengthy memo to you in February about Mr. Boreski, citing all the encounters the police department has had and all the investigations they've done with regard to Mr. Boreski. You folks probably recall this. For the record and for the audience, I'll read the last two paragraphs. The police department has a long history of receiving complaints of this nature from Mr. Boreski. For the past 5 years, Sergeant Jack Rodriguez has supervised the police department's accident investigation unit and has had the most dealings with Mr. Boreski. He reports that there is no other person, bicyclist, motorist, or pedestrian, that approaches the frequency with which Mr. Boreski brings these kinds of incidents and complaints forward to the police department. While the police department continues to address all such complaints that come to its attention, Mr. Boreski's lack of cooperation and pattern of unresponsiveness have made it difficult to fully investigate some of his complaints. Nevertheless, the police department has made arrests. In 3 instances in which Mr. Boreski was involved in an encounter with motorists, we've made arrests, and taken traffic enforcement action where his complaints have been validated through investigation and where the enforcement action was appropriate under law. There are other circumstances where we could not document his version of events, and hence, as you would expect from a professional police department, we don't make arrests absent documentation and proof that the event occurred. I also want to point out, and I have since followed up with a letter to him after he appeared in front of this panel some time ago with regard to the January 9th incident in 2015. The January 9th incident in 2015, Mr. Boreski came before this body a couple weeks later and made these allegations. You may or may not recall, I was in the room, and you may or may not recall that Sergeant Elvis Camacho, one of our uniform officers, met with him immediately afterwards, explained our entire process to investigate his complaint, and he did not follow up on that. He did not cooperate with the police department and with our internal affairs unit at that time. Now he brings the matter up again, and I sent him a letter explaining that even if I were to find misconduct today, under state statute, the time lapse has been such that we were informed, we're not able to investigate, that even if at this late date I was to find misconduct on part of officers, discipline would not be possible because it's barred by basically our Peace Officer Bill of Rights statute of limitations, but that nevertheless, I would be willing to still investigate his complaint and take whatever remedial action I can take without discipline, and he has not cooperated. I also explain in the letter, which is complete common sense, that you can't investigate a complaint without the willing cooperation of the complainant, and Mr. Boreski is unwilling to complain about that. Now, what's particularly incenses me about his continuing appearance in front of this body is he says he's afraid of the Miami Beach Police Department. So I've offered him a couple of options if he's afraid to literally meet with my investigators. One is that he could meet in my office with me present with the investigators. He has turned that down. The other is there are other avenues to file a complaint against the police department, including going to the state attorney's office, the county board of ethics, or the United States attorney. So I've afforded him all those opportunities as well. So I'm here to tell you, as your appointed leader of the police department, okay, that the allegations and representations he has made to you about the men and women who work for me are, to be kind, unfair. And I'd like you to consider that. I assume that he'll continue to make these appearances, but the situation with regard to Mr. Boreski in the 3 years I have been here is largely unchanged. And the 3 times that we found probable cause to charge somebody with crimes as a result of his encounters, and again, he has these encounters with such great frequency with other motorists, that is what it is. But 3 times we have made arrests when the proof was there. So thank you for your forbearance and listening to me with regard to this. Thank you.
Good afternoon.